Welcome to Light Warrior Radio, where our mission is to empower sensitive souls to harness their superpowers and shine their light, so together we can co-create heaven on earth. I'm your host, Dr. 𝗟𝗡𝗟𝗡, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, and founder of the Academy of Light Medicine and the 𝗟𝗡𝗟𝗡𝗡 Healing Method. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, everyone. Light Warrior Radio. I am super excited today. We have my special guest, Marguerite Rigoglioso, and we've had her on the show before. And we first talked about Mary Magdalene on the first show. Today, we're going to talk about Mother Mary. So I finished reading her book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. Loved the book, totally resonated with. And I was like, I knew there was something that they didn't tell us in church, right? So super excited to dive into what was the real life of Mother Mary and all the research that has been done. So let me share a little bit more about Marguerite before I formally welcome her. So Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, PhD, is the founder of Seven Sisters Mystery School, a world-renowned teacher of sacred knowledge, and the foremost authority on the history of the virgin birth. A trusted mentor to people on healing and spiritual paths, she draws on her decades-long research and experiences with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene to help uncover their hidden, timeless teachings and apply them to our present-day needs. The award-winning author of several books, including The Secret Life of Mother Mary, Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening, and The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Birth. She lives in Western Massachusetts, and we are so glad to have you here today, Marguerite.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Karen. I know we've tried to make this happen and it's finally happening.
It's happening in the perfect timing. It's
Yeah,
always perfect.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's go back and a while back and I want to ask you, how, first of all, did you even get interested at all in the Marys? Like, how did that all happen?
Yeah, I grew up Catholic and they were kind of there. And my ears would perk up when I would hear about Mary Magdalene at Easter time. Like there seemed to be something kind of interesting there. And one of our priests would have people do the washing of the feet.
Oh,
Like it would kind of in honor of Mary Magdalene, and that he was kind of groovy. And
very.
so yeah, and so years later, I kind of had a falling out with the church, Catholicism, Christianity, and I'm like, whatever. I went over into goddess spirituality. And of course, what did I start finding out? Well, Mother Mary was the goddess in my own backyard. And even before that, Mary Magdalene was a pretty cool woman. And as I was having this awakening, Margaret Starbird had come out with her book, The Woman with the Alabaster Jar. And there were all these other books that were coming out. And then a whole spate of research came out about Mary Magdalene. So I was like all in on that because I was very bookish. I was really interested. I took a women's spirituality program in the Boston area that was going on at the time at one of these spiritual centers that was there. And that program led us into Mother Mary as the goddess of the West. So I started kind of studying her, intellectually and then ritually. There were different rituals that would come about. I went to Italy, where there were processions to Mother Mary that were laid on top of the ancient foundations of like Demeter and Persephone veneration, different things like that. So this was totally intriguing to go back into my own ancestry, Sicily, southern Italy, where the Black Madonna was really the most recent appearance of the goddess,
Mm.
Italy and Sicily. So this is some of how I started getting into it. I started working in the realm of sacred ceremony with women in these various programs that I was taking. Then I went to the California Institute of Integral Studies and I studied women's spirituality, got my PhD essentially. And one of my major teachers, as I write about in the book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, was Charlene Spretnak, who was a real giant, an intellectual giant who also had a book about Mother Mary, and I took a class with her. My other mentor there, 𝗟𝗡𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗟, had written a book about Black Madonnas in Italy and Sicily. So this was like, it really wove together again the intellectual and the intuitional that I like to do. And it went on from there. From there I really started entering into realizing that Mother Mary could be a personal healer and a spiritual mentor. So there was, it's just been a decades long journey, but that's the short story with it.
That is beautiful. And you probably know I did not have as groovy a priest growing up. Very nice, but um, all I heard about Mother Mary literally was like she had the virgin birth. She's so holy and meek and nice, like, and you pray to Hail Mary when you sin, okay? And then Mary Magdalene was considered a prostitute. I didn't even know, like, at that point, I was like, why is she even in the book? You know what I mean? Like, why are we talking about a prostitute? I didn't
Yeah.
really get it. And when I mean, even before reading your book, I heard little bits of like, the book of Thomas and the book of Mary Magdalene. I'm like, what? There's a book of Mary Magdalene? And then the
Right.
thought that maybe she was Jesus's consort. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here? Right. So, and then your books come out, and I'm like, OMG, this is completely different from what I grew up with. So tell us about, Mary, Mother Mary. Here I'm thinking meek, you know, virgin, kind of almost like a victim of the virgin birth. Tell us
Yeah.
your side of the story.
No, I know. Well, it's like there's a divine timing to all of this going on.
Mm.
So that over the past 40 years, there's been the awakening both by scholars and people, regular old people, to the presence of Mary Magdalene and the reality of Mary Magdalene, that something is amiss in how she was portrayed. And so while there's been scholarship about Mother Mary, it hasn't really taken that turn
Ah.
until this book, where I started looking at these gospels that were dedicated to her, biographies, ancient biographies, and all of that sort of thing. And come to find out, written there in plain sight, available for everyone, is a very different view of how Mother Mary herself was born divinely of her mother. So Jesus wasn't the first divinely conceived child. Mother Mary was conceived in that way.
Wow.
How Mother Mary was raised as an infant, as a toddler, as a child, how she was then given over to the temple, and how she, was able to conceive divinely. And I talk about, because I have all this background in divine birth from ancient Greece and the ancient
Mm.
Mediterranean world, I knew how to read all the signs in her gospel, which is known as the Infancy Gospel of James, originally called Birth of Mary.
Hmm.
I knew how to read what they were telling us there, that, oh my gosh, she was doing this, she was doing that, she was being trained, she was going through this process, right? And so that gospel and these other biographical documents, and some of the other gospels, like the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Bartholomew, they really all attest to a very different Mother Mary than that meek, mild, passive, submissive, good girl, virgin. No, come to find out, and what I really explore and expand upon in The Secret Life of Mother Mary is that she was the leader of the entire Christian enterprise. Okay, so after she was divinely born from her mother, she was in communication with Divine Mother to bring this avatar in to help turn our world around. Okay. She taught him in the womb. She taught him when he was out of the womb. She was his greatest confidant and soulmate when they were, both alive. She resurrected him through her own womb, according to 𝗛𝗚𝗡𝗨𝗟, the late Hindu saint. The whole resurrection process was thanks to her womb capacities and powers. And then she was the head of the whole entire, group after Jesus was resurrected. Essentially, the first pope, if you want to look at her in that way, she was the leader of the entire, what we would call the church. Mary Magdalene was her mentee, Peter was her mentee. Mary Magdalene was then the leader of the women, and Peter was the leader of the men, but Mother Mary was the leader of them all. She was a mentor. Yeah, and she was also a stepmother. She was a stepmother to Joseph's children. conceived by another woman prior to him becoming her guardian, not really her conjugal spouse. So there are just so many things that I'm just popcorn style throwing out there to get people to become intrigued and look further in this book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, where I really lay out all the details and the evidence for this.
Mm. Oh yeah, it is definitely fascinating from my thoughts and beliefs of her being this meek, almost like I said, victim of the
Right.
divine conception, to being the one that is the orchestrator and the whole lineage of priestesses who are trained in this immaculate conception. And the amount of training and discipline and energies and focus and to some degree sacrifice of everyday life required to bring the avatar in, it's like mind-blowing. And at first I thought, Marguerite, like, well, why doesn't she just, why do we even need Jesus? I know there's an answer to this, but I'll let you answer it. Like,
Yeah.
why didn't she just be Jesus, right? Why does she have to bring Jesus in?
Right. Well, that's a really good question. And a lot of the details about Mother Mary as a divine birth priestess are in the previous book that you mentioned, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception. That's where I really lay out the evidence for how divine birth is a real thing, how Mother Mary was part of that lineage, and how it's a lineage that spans not only the ancient Mediterranean and Aegean, but the whole entire continent.
Amazing.
Um, and so, according to 𝗟𝗘𝗟𝗟𝗏, the late Hindu saint who claimed to have past life recall of this family and also gathered a lot of the actual textual information on ancient palm leaves that contained mantras and yantras and philosophical practices of the Marys, of Jesus, and beyond, the sages of our world. She had Mother Mary herself would have wanted to kind of turn the world around herself. And in her morning, very elaborate meditations and mantra programs that she would do, she would talk to the angels and she would talk to Mother Divine. And she said, what can we do? And the message to her was that, look, we are in an epoch in which you, as the feminine, are the world. You are one with nature. You don't want to go into the role of like the warrior right now. It would be too demanding and um, damaging to your being. You would be best off bringing in a Shiva character, a male, to do that work, that heavy lifting. And so that's how the decision was made. And this is all according to 𝗟𝗘𝗟𝗏 in his book, The Real Life and Teachings of Jesus Christ, which I cite profusely. And I believe my chapter 4, I really go into this. And so she was like, okay, I will be the conduit for this sacred masculine being to come in, this higher level avatar, because I'm going to divinely conceive him, not the way that others usually are conceived. And that will give him, these extra higher powers. That's the purpose of divine birth, divine conception without male sperm. And then he will be the one whom I will support and others will support, but he'll kind of be the lightning rod for all of this. Okay, so that's the short story on that one.
Well, that makes sense too. There was that key part where you mentioned in the book about that it wasn't appropriate, especially at that time, appropriate for her to be the warrior,
Yeah.
and that really like that touched me
Yeah.
because there's a lot of feminine right now out there who are or have had to amplify their own internal divine masculine,
Right.
like even the last few years, mothers standing up for their children,
Yeah.
and saying, no, you are not doing this to our children, the mama bears, right? And people have even laughed, maybe, it's kind of painful, at the wimpy man or the, not so masculine man. And why are the women in charge and all this kind of stuff? But back then, that was not going to work.
Yeah. This is a whole question about what has happened with the genders to begin with. All right.
Mm,
And this goes back to the splitting of the original human into male and female. The
Okay.
original human, according to the Gnostic sources and others, you know, seconded by Rudolf Steiner, the great seer, and others, it was the original human was an androgyne, was a hermaphrodite, was
Hmm.
a male-female being. That was our angelic form until these negative archonic forces split us. And that's really encoded in the story of Adam and Eve. That's what that's all about.
Mm.
Okay, that
Interesting. Wow.
Eve came from Adam's rib. Well, not exactly. That was when the archons split the female and male. And then they had to kind of regroup from that trauma. And then they created sacred marriage as a means of coming together and created means of being in harmony, male and female. But these negative forces have always been at work, attacking the human family and making it more difficult. So then they created these strife memes to go on between men and women, and so we've been dealing with that for thousands of years. Um, they broke the codes of sacred marriage, and so we've been dealing with that for thousands of years. And now they're creating a whole confusion about gender on another whole level. So there's a lot that's been going on here. All right. And so Mother Mary, as one of many Marys, she wasn't the only Mary. This is a lineage of priestesses whose title goes back to Mary in Egypt, in Egyptian, meaning beloved of the divine, or the one who loves, the one who is love. It's a priestess title of love, right? So Mary and the Marys and Yeshua Jesus were well aware of these negative forces that are still going on today. And they came, they've come in various incarnations and so forth. So we know them as the Holy Family, but there are other places where and ways in which I think their energy has been operating in other systems and cultures. They came to right this wrong and to awaken humans to their divine light within, and to have humans re reunite themselves within as male female.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's part of what's going on, and that's what's actually needed when a woman divinely conceives. She's got to totally balance her yin and yang in order for that to happen without
Oh.
a male actor coming in. All right, so that these are just part of the mysteries that I'm like hinting at, that are hinted at in these two books, and that I also teach about in my Mary and Magdalene Priestess training, which is coming around again in September. So, I mean, we're having a huge awakening now. All right, so I'll just pause right there because I know that I put a lot out here on the table for people to, and people must be feeling whiz bang. Whoa, what? What did she say? I cannot even follow all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely different information, right? From what we were taught, and yet so empowering as well. I'm sure there's some people that are listening, watching this, thinking, Immaculate Conception? Priestess lineage? Is that possible today?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, I've known of people who have divinely conceived or have
Really?
genetically, yeah.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
write about some of them in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. So, yes, I mean, this has been an ongoing practice, or an ongoing attempted practice that, um, there are a variety of cases that attest to this. So, and it's an ongoing exploration, what is conception anyway? How does it really happen? What is really required? How much sovereignty does a woman have over the experience? What if she advances this kind of power within her and that kind of power within her?
Okay. Okay.
These are part of the holy womb mysteries that Mother Mary
Mhm.
and Mary Magdalene were all about.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about womb power lately. It's very interesting, and that is not to denigrate or diminish the masculine in our society at all.
Correct.
What, in your perspective, given everything that you know, everything that you've researched, what is the role of male, female, woman, man in today's world?
Well, it's to be in balance and harmony. And, I did a lot of studying of matriarchal societies over the last
Mm.
20 years as well. And there are some excellent books on that, by 𝗛𝗘𝗟𝗡𝗨𝗟, for example. She's got the mother lode of study in, I think, two books, on matriarchy or matriarchal societies. And the way they are described by living matriarchies, there were people from living matriarchies who have contributed to this knowledge base and would come to some of these conferences that Haida and others would sponsor, is that a matriarchal society, is the most healthy type of society. In that, what does it mean? It means that the women are at the center and the men are around the women in a circular formation. That's the
Hmm.
geometry, not pyramidal or anything like that. And they work in co-creative partnerships. So if the woman is not the actual leader of the tribe, and let's say the men are the leaders of the tribe, it's the women who choose them and fire them. There is a longhouse tradition of raising children and being in families. It's not the nuclear family. So that pressure is off, that financial pressure is off, that social pressure is off. The children's father is really the mother's brother, okay, their uncle, you know. So, I mean, what I'm getting at is that there there are we're pretty screwed up when it comes to, you know, how families should be structured, what the male and female roles are, what male strength is, what female strength is. And it's about the male using his strength in service to the female, in service to the family, right? In service to doing the heavy lifting that is needed. And the woman is there for, the nurturance, the expanding the intuitional side of life, the spiritual side of life. So it's really a harmonious kind of thing. And so we have a lot to do to become aware of how far askew we've come. What are the other ways that are possible for us to be in harmony as men and women? And then there's the whole level of the healing, personal healing that has to happen, and the male female healing that needs to happen now. Um,
Mm.
okay, so I mean, that's just a little foray into the topic of gender roles and so forth. But those Marys were right up there with Jesus. I mean, there was a whole women's cohort, there was a whole men's cohort in terms of these sacred leaders and or followers of this Jesus movement, so to speak. But it was really the Jesus Mary movement.
Wow. Yeah, that's a definitely a different paradigm, like I said, from what I grew up. And, just to speak to the different thoughts and of, let's just say, what people think is going to help save the world, if you will. So there's a camp that is like, hey, well, we'll call them conservatives. So, hey, the nuclear family has been destroyed. You women who want your women's rights, that was just all a ruse to get you to become a taxpayer. Okay. So not that they say you have to stay in the home and raise the children per se, but this whole career minded, head of the whatever company, whatever, the men have been taking the step back to let the women up there. And the conservatives are like, hey, this is ass backwards, guys. Men, like, get some balls, like, like, let's go. You're supposed to be directing, that you're supposed to be protecting the women, and here are the women. This is not okay that they're the ones that are protecting the children, and you're sitting back going, well, that's nice, dear. So what do you think about that perception? Is that correct, partially correct?
I think it's all about that we all need to do our personal healing.
Mm.
Because when you start doing your personal healing, then you have some realizations about what's going on in your life, your family, and in the world. And you realize, wow, We really need to change things up in a big, big way. And so, we're all doing that right now. We're in a very intense period right now where a lot of people are getting sick and leaving because they are not up to the vibration that is needed, and or they're tired and they want to like recycle and come back at another time. It's very intense. We're all going through the sieve right now. It's a intensified timing on the planet
Mm.
right now. And the Marys are here to help us. They're here to help us with that personal wounded child trauma healing. And they're here to help us with the spiritual awakening, because right on the heels of the personal healing is the spiritual awakening. And sometimes one comes before the other, but we are wanting to have our spiritual awakening out of just three-dimensional understandings into the understanding that, wow, there's a whole world of other dimensions, other intelligences, other beings like the Marys, like Jesus, like, the other ascended masters and so forth, like our ancestors who are on the other side, right? And then what do we do with that? What do we do with them? What do we need to know? What kinds of initiations do we need to go through to have our sight and our powers awakened? This is what's happening right now. And I think this is why the scales are coming off our eyes about the Marys, as a very first step. Like, hey, we were not told the correct information about them in order to keep us blind, dumbed down, and so forth. But now all those veils are starting to be lifted. And then it's like, well, what do we do with that? How do we help ourselves and each other with this healing, with this awakening, so that we can expand and move on to um our ascension, our coming into our angelic self, our creating of the new earth. That's really what these sacred people were about, coming here 2,000 years ago, and the story is still the same now. And they're still here. They're accessible on the
Mm.
planes.
Well, and you talked about other beings, avatars, helpers, supporters, not just spiritual guides. How do the Marys interact, or what is their role related to, say, aliens, unicorns? I don't know, whatever.
Well, I talk about the unicorns and why unicorn is so associated with Mother Mary and the virgins in medieval Europe, for example. Um, and it's because the Marys are part of that realm, part of that
Mm.
interdimensional realm, where dwell unicorns, fairies, angels, ascended masters, and on up into our star systems, the Pleiades, right? All these kinds of things are things that we're starting to awaken to their presence and their reality. It's always been here, but our third eye has been occluded not to be able to see them and feel them. And so these Marys and Jesus are all part of these other um, star intelligences, star systems. You can call them aliens in some cases, although we usually use that for like the negative types of beings that are not helpful to humanity and are siphoning off of us. But there are lots of positive energies. And again, I include the Pleiades among them, that the
Gotcha.
Marys are very much associated with. And this is where the Mary's use of sacred medicines really comes in, that I talk about in The Secret Life of Mother Mary and The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, and that William Henry especially talks about quite a bit, that their ancient title as the Miraphors, the myrrh bearers, was really much more um, of an honorific than we know, because they were the women who would use the sacred medicines to awaken people's consciousness. And these communion dinners and so forth were like drug fests where the people, these fishermen from wherever, Capernaum or whatever, are like, oh my God, I can see the light now because you've given me, myrrh spiked with mushrooms, spiked with whatever. Okay, so this is what was happening. And
Wow.
Magdalene with her alabaster jar. Well, what's in that alabaster jar? Well, why don't you take it into your body and find out, you know?
Mm.
Okay, because we need our ways to awaken, and the plants are here to help us. They've always been here, they will be here. The cannabis of the world, the Amanita and psilocybin mushrooms of the world, the peyote, the wachuma or San Pedro cactus of the world, the ayahuasca brew, right? And they're
Yeah, so it's
all
interesting yeah, because from your book, what I was gathering is that there was this whole ancient technology and knowledge of how to use the earth and the herbs and the oils and things like that, and to the part where that I was, if I got this correctly, about literally resurrecting the dead. I mean, not that
yeah.
that happens every day, okay, but I was like, wow, that is amazing.
Well, certainly these oils were used to help the dead cross.
Mm.
Okay. And in some cases where the shaman was very powerful, like Jesus, and I think Mother Mary knew how to do this too, according to 𝗛𝗚𝗡𝗟𝗟, they knew how to retrieve the soul back into the body.
Yeah, yeah,
So when that happened with Lazarus and Jesus was so upset, he pulled the soul back into the body. But, that's a controversial technique. You know what I mean? At the very least, anointing the body before, in the 3 days that the soul is still hovering around is is a way to help the soul, awaken and go to the light oftentimes, or, go to the right place where they need to.
Mm.
It
Okay.
assists people. And for all we know, these medicines were already being administered before the person was leaving the body entirely to really help them go.
Wow, that's fascinating. I remember when my father-in-law was on his way out and there was an option to use morphine, but I got the message, do not do that.
I know, because this is another thing that needs to be completely revised. The death passage. Yeah, because the morphine, I mean, granted, people who are in excruciating pain, but what if we were using hallucinogens or a different kind of thing to help them in a different way instead of dumbing them down with the morphine to cap them?
And there's some concern too in the spiritual realms, and I've seen it myself personally, is that sometimes when people are using drugs, even the ones that you mentioned, the herbal ones from the earth, that it can open up and if they're not spiritually mature, that opening can allow negative energies to either enter, control, attach, that kind
Right.
of thing, if they don't have good boundaries. So
Well,
any
that's
thoughts?
why we need our teachers again. We need our initiations. We need our mystery traditions where you'd be trained a whole year before you even got near the 𝗚𝗡𝗟𝗡 and the Eleusinian mysteries, with your sponsor, somebody who had already gone through it.
So
But yeah,
just willy-nilly going, well,
no,
psilocybin sounds really great. Let's do
no,
it.
it's not just about going to a rave and like opening these kids' crowns and portals and then they don't know what to do with it. They're completely overwhelmed. I had some experiences like that. And I guess I had to learn the hard way, but wow, that is not how I would like to lead other people.
Okay.
Because then when you open to the realms, you open to the realms. And if you don't know how to deal with it, some people get, the nice trip to the Elysian fields and all la la la. And other people like me, I'd be, in hell for 7 hours and be like, wow, what gives? But now what I've learned through the Marys and Yeshua is that, well, your biggest protection is your love field.
Yes.
Okay. So there's that whole teaching about going into the other dimensional realms. And so now when I start feeling like, whoa, there's energies coming in, I just am like, oh yeah, right. My love field, and it just all calms down. But
It's
that
interesting.
was like 15 years of study the hard way and working with
Gotcha.
fairies. This is how complex it is and how rich and multifaceted it is. And, you know, like for us to look at the Marys and Jesus and, the advent of these people who incarnated into the planet 2000 years ago in a mature way is so exciting because it's really calibrated for the now. It's not about, oh my God, they had robes and they were like, we have to worship them and they're our parents. And, no, they're helping us to be like, look, I am the Mary within you. I am
Mm.
the Jesus within you. I am simply helping you to open your light body up. That's it. And heal along the way, of course, because if you've got a lot of trauma and you're still dealing with that, that's going to come in as you're having this awakening, right? So we need it all on all fronts,
Right.
emotional, the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual. We need all of these layers of teachings to come back to us.
Mm. Yeah, so it's not just about the action or the herb or the whatever. It's that intentionality and in this case training,
Training
the
in the
support,
community.
the training, the mystery school
Teach,
lineage, how to use things safely and for that awakening.
yeah, like let's think about, indigenous people. Well, they would have that, right? Until they got smashed to smithereens, and now we've got little pieces of them floating around trying to, okay, but this information is still available, if nothing else in the Akashic records. And so for us to all open to our knowledge of the great library of all that is very important. That's what part
Hmm.
of it is.
Yeah, I heard from other beings that the dimensional aspects of water actually carry the true history of the planet. Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah.
yeah. It is
I mean,
very.
that's a whole, there are many portals in,
Hmm. Hmm.
there are many ways to access this information. I love that. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so cool. Well, I put in the show notes if you're watching this on YouTube or elsewhere, as well as in the chat if you're live with us, where you can reach Marguerite. Tell us a little bit about your free meditations, and then if somebody wants to do some additional training with you, what's involved.
Yeah, so the free meditations, they're associated with the Mary book, the Secret Life of Mother Mary. Each chapter at the end, I tell you about, hey, go to this link so that you can access this particular meditation associated with this chapter. So there are 8 meditations that are freely available at the link that you'll have under the show notes. And so it allows people to have a personal journey with one or both of the Marys, for healing or for empowerments like remothering, like all different topics. Okay. So a lot of people have written in that they really appreciate that it helps them go from, again, their mind reading the book into an emotional and spiritual experience with the Marys, really easy, really free. Okay. And so there's that, and at sevensistersmysteryschool.com, the seven is written out SEVEN. There are other free resources. And the closest resource that I have for what we're talking about today is twofold. One is I have a monthly Mary and Magdalene Empowerment Circle. Every, once a month, we get together and I offer a different theme, again, with a guided journey that I essentially channel. And then we have a little bit of group sharing, and then we have some Q&A where I just open up my oracle to whatever the questions are that are coming up around the world or for the theme of the day, whatever it is. And soon that is going to be part of our inner sanctum temple. And it's kind of a monthly experience that people will have other access to other resources and almost all of my library of courses. And then
Mm.
I have the Mary and Magdalene the Mary and Magdalene Priestess training. So if
Mm.
you really want to go deeper and have your doors open further and your grounding set for a lot of the things I've been talking about and more, that would be the place for you, because we look at the Mary's connection with sacred medicines, sacred oils, with the fairies, with the unicorns, with the Pleiades, with um, and people, we're taken through initiations where we get the intellectual information, and then we have a journey together, usually using either cacao or cannabis, depending on people's choice, or nothing at all. You don't have to use anything, but most people find one of those safe, but it's expansive. It starts opening you, especially the cacao, in very safe ways so that you can experience these things on the other dimensional planes and really like integrate them into your body, mind, spirit. So that's what that training is all about. We just had our first cohort go through it. It was very, very exciting. And I'm setting up to do it again in September. We'll be enrolling at the end of July
And is
2025.
that virtual or in person or
That
both?
is virtual. That is virtual. There will be an in-person component in terms of a retreat that I'm going to be doing in the fall that is under in the planning stages of. So, my idea is, okay, the book was wonderful to write. It's wonderful to share. And I'm wanting to help people go much deeper. That's the point.
Right.
Not just to be noodling around these ideas, but using them to unlock, the doors to who you really are and what's
Yeah,
really
that's great.
available to you at this time on the earth. Accessing your knowledge, accessing your ancestral wisdom, accessing, right, what's available to us as human beings as we're going into this enormously creative time. I mean, yes, to many it can seem like chaos is ensuing, but actually when you know that when it's dark, there's a light place, and that's where we're going. And that's where you can access. You could have a great life right now, no matter what is going on out there. And this is not about putting your head in the sand. It's about putting your head into the deeper dimensions and going, oh, that's reality.
I love that.
That's what the Marys were all about. They were not just about like be good and do this and follow this rule and then you'll go to heaven. No, and the thing is that what I talk about in the Secret Life of Mother Mary, and I think even the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, there's this part in the Gnostic Gospel of Philip where basically it says this: as you see and understand deeper and deeper levels of these masters, you awaken these deeper and deeper levels within yourself. And as you awaken these levels within yourself, you see deeper and deeper levels of these masters, and it's infinite. Journey, there's always something to do. There's always somewhere to go. It's continuous. And that is what's happening now with the unveiling of Mary Magdalene over the last 40 years. Wow, haven't women gotten like, woo, a boot up? Now, same thing with Mother Mary, even more intensively, because guess what? She's the woman who had her final ascension. She really went into full goddesshood. And if we're all talking about unifying with the divine, well, she's got the pathway.
Yeah. That was very interesting to me. And very like, I felt a lot of like, light when I read that in your book. It was so cool. Now,
Yeah.
what about men?
This
So
is
there might
about you all. You know what I mean? It's about you all, y'all, right?
y'all.
It's not about me. It's about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about our men? There may be some men that are going to be watching the show. Is it relevant to them? Would the meditations help them?
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. Same thing. And one thing that since I've written this book and since I've been talking about this book is that I've had a real reckoning with Divine Father. All right, I'll tell you about that. So, as a goddess woman for a couple of decades, it was like when it came to the white man bearded guy in the sky and all of his abuses. And because basically, you read some of these texts of soap religions that will remain unnamed, and you're like, this is horrific. Why would I ever want to be following this particular deity and their injunctions when they're all about murder and jealousy and blah de da? Well, there is a true divine masculine entity being, and I had to like get to him, just the same as I had to get to Divine Mother, which of course are really all reflections of what's within, but they are outside and they are inside.
Mm.
Same thing. But I had to get to that pure land of divine father, divine masculine, divine God recently in order to balance my life out. Because what was happening,
Mm.
running around like a chicken without a head, really super putting on the masculine armor and this and that, and
Getting things done, yeah.
exhausting myself. So as soon as I started a couple of months ago, I was given by another teacher. She said, I really highly recommend that you connect with Divine Father. And she took me through a journey, and I'm like, oh my God. And I had to keep going under and under the image that we've been given of Divine Father.
Yeah.
Oh no, the pure Divine Father, the one who does have your back, the one who does care for you, the one who is providential. He provides.
Mm.
Okay. I had to get in touch with that through my own journeys, including a major medicine journey. And then, boy, did my life change.
Really? Ooh, interesting.
Specific instructions of even which hours to work during the week. And I've been following it, and my life has like rejuvenated. And wouldn't you know it, like this abundance thing coming up to the fore. All right. So I'm telling you, when we start working with these levels with divine mother energy, with the true authentic divine father energy, we are supported. We set magical things afoot, in our lives, in the universe. And we can call on these Marys and Yeshua and the masters beyond to support us with this.
That is beautiful.
And
Thank
then
you
we
so much,
stay
Margaret.
in the positive. We stay in the positive thinking, the positive visioning, and do
Yeah.
everything we can to stay in the positive. Don't go on that website about the news over there. Wow. You'll be in 3D hell before you know it.
It's funny because I mean, there was also, a part where I recently recorded a spiritual medicine digest or podcast. I think it was a podcast that said why spiritual people annoy me sometimes. And what it was that, not looking at their own personal shadows to heal and
That's a different
thinking
story.
positive,
That's
right?
a different story. That's a
Yeah.
different story. I'm not saying love and light, love and light. That's all it is. No.
Unicorns and rainbows.
Believe me, I've been through, 25 years of hell and this and that. And no, you've got to go through hell to get to your heaven. And that is something that has to do with also your emotional healing. You cannot be doing spiritual bypasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So when you're
anybody,
saying positive, you're not talking about spiritual bypassing. You're
no,
saying hold the vision.
hold the vision. All right. And there's no one way to do this, but it's like by getting these ideas and trying them out for yourself, or, you'll find your way. And surrounding yourself with people who are into this sort of thing, they're into the healing and they're into the awakening. Then you'll have people who are grounded and who are not just bypassing.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. That's great. So Marguerite, we have time for maybe a couple of questions before we are done. So I just put in the show notes as well as the chat for those of you here live, where to connect with Marguerite, her free meditations, her 7 Sisters Mystery School. So you have those links there. And for those that are live, our special guests here, if you have any questions or comments for Marguerite, you can just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute, or let's have a conversation here.
Yeah, bring them in. I'd love to hear how this is
Yeah. How's this
striking
landing for you?
Yeah, how's it landing for you?
Okay, so Maria says, wondering about Fatima and places where Mary has appeared. Does she talk about that in the book? Okay, do you talk about that in the book?
No, I don't. But you know, these are, this is the link. I mean, I talk about it in the sense of Mary's connection with the Fey realms. That
Mm.
she's connected with these power spots be they power spots of nature or caves or, all these are fairy dwelling places, right?
Okay.
So if she's coming through, and half the time, these kids never said she was Mother Mary. You know what I mean? They were like the lady in white. And the church is like, oh my God, Mother Mary, you know? And
Ah,
the church has put the impression that this is Mother Mary, but it's not wrong either, because Mother Mary does come through these nature power spot realms. So I feel that wherever Mother Mary is said to be appearing, if you go there and you feel power, go for it. Soak it up. Receive the blessings of the Mary Fairy, wherever that is, Fatima, Lourdes, right? Um, in Mexico, right? Okay. So that's what I would say about
mm.
that.
Yeah. So if there's pull to go there, to visit there and these power spots, and it might be your calling to actually explore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neat. Well,
Connect with
thank you.
the multi-dimensionality. All these places are portals, right? And so, of course, Mary or one like her, which is Mary in another vibration, would come through there, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because originally I thought Mary was her name, and what you're saying in the book is it's like the order of the Marys.
Yeah. It was like
So everyone's name was Mary, who is part of
yeah,
the order.
that's why Mary Magdalene is named Mary, Miriam, um, the sister, it's Miriam in Hebrew, Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses, uh, Mary Salome, Mary, there are all these Marys because they really were an order. And the Gospel of Philip kind of hints at that when he says, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary's sister were all Marys, and they always walked around Jesus. So Mother Mary's sister, born after her by her mother Hannah, um, also came to be named Mary.
Hmm,
Why? Why would a mother name two children the same name? Well,
right?
because they are the same soul group lineage kind of thing. All right.
Wow. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hear from you people. Come on. What's your comments?
Anybody? We still have 6 minutes left.
Yeah. Let's,
Comments, questions,
is there,
objections, Katie.
oh yeah.
Yeah, mix of a couple. I'd love to just comment what you were just saying about connecting with the divine masculine as well. It's interesting to me personally. I've just been on a journey connecting into my divine feminine because I've been very in the kind of not so divine masculine that we're sort of shoved into in this world. And what came through very early on that was I need to unblock the masculine, connect with the divine masculine in order to access fully the divine feminine. So I love that you just brought that up at the end.
It's
Um,
so true. It's so true. It's so almost seemingly paradoxical, but in
mm,
one sense. But yeah, in order to really access fully the divine feminine and our feminine self, we really do need to open up to the masculine and his providential nature and how he lives within us so that we're yin yang.
yeah. And I also had a question. It's a kind of a curiosity that you may or may not have come across in your studies around a character like Joan of Arc, who's took on a very masculine role. And I mean, and also the manner of her death, the burning at the stake, that struck me. You're like ripping the soul out of the body. It's like you're almost destroying the geometry of the
Yeah.
soul and the body through that. I mean, it's not accidental that certain powers chose to burn at the stake rather than any other
Yes.
method of
That's right. These are all
ending
the
life.
witch burnings that we are all remembering, that we
Mhm.
experienced, witnessed, maybe even perpetrated. The witch burnings, which is really a suffocation, the hangings, the drownings, these are all throat chakra ultimately stoppages. And they create a lot of trauma that goes on into other lifetimes, as we all know, by all of us having memories of being witch burned or having a terror around this whole thing. Like how many people, how many of us, right? So we are clearing those kinds of lineage traumas. And Joan of Arc, she went into the warrior mode. So women have gone into the warrior mode. And I have past lives about the Amazons. And I have teachings about the Amazons that people can access through the forthcoming Inner Sanctum Temple in June, free, that I did with Indigo Angel. All my research on the Amazons. It's very important to know what went on, and then what is the Akashic reality of that. Where did those Amazons descend from? And I really mean in a sense of descent. Because it wasn't always like that, but the women, as patriarchy, as these forces were getting so strong on the planet, patriarchy was amping up with a distorted masculine energy. The women were feeling abandoned, and the sacred was not being protected anymore. So they had to take up arms, or felt they did. All right. And we've got Amazons throughout Africa, throughout, Turkey, Greece, and so forth, but they really go all the way back to Atlantis and then Lemuria, when they were part of priestesshoods that were very highly sacred and had the divine conception rites. But again, as the descent was happening, the descent into 3D, the fracturing of the sacred marriages, the destructions of the temples, males becoming programmed and hijacked and attacking other people, women, the indigenous. I mean, it was just crazy. And so the women were like, we're not going to take it. Okay, but that is not the best role for the woman, because we have the womb. As it is, we're cleaning up half the time every day. So it's like, no, we don't need to fulfill that warrior role. And we need to be in our power in a much different way. Once the environment is clear and safe for us to do that, wow,
Yeah,
that is no meek power.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, that does clarify a lot for me. So thanks for asking that question, Katie. That was great. Well, our time is up, Marguerite. Thank you so much for being with us today, and love that our participants were here live with us as well. Such a beautiful time.
Oh, nice to see you. My gosh. So cool. Yeah, thank you for having me, Karen. Really, as always, a very illuminating and exciting conversation to have with you.
Likewise, very wonderful, and we'll keep in touch to see what else you're, doing. And it's the exploration is fantastic, and I just love that we could connect again. So thank you.
Oh, blessed be. All right. Well, come on, everybody, and get your free meditations and start connecting in with the Marys in a whole new way.
All right. Thank
Lots of
you.
love.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Remember to subscribe and give a thumbs up if you like this. All the best. Much love. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. If it resonated with you, would love for you to hit subscribe and the like button, and perhaps share it with someone who's like-minded who would appreciate it. And in the meantime, would love to connect with you in my light medicine community. It's absolutely free to join, and it's for sensitive souls who wish to receive love and support, and also to share who they really are. It's a safe space for each of us to really shine. So I'll put the link below, as well as this week's offerings and freebies, and we will see you there.